Hello, everyone. Welcome to History with Hersefat. I'm your host, Chris, aka Hersefat. Today, we'll be discussing the history of psychedelics and psychedelic medicine, its benefits, dangers, and our own personal experiences. The views shared on this podcast come from your everyday, ordinary people. My hope is that it'll give unique perspective on history. For future podcasts, we'll be doing the years 1983 and 1984, continuing with the decade of the 80s. A little note, and for those who that only listen to our podcast via Spotify, Apple, or Google, we also have a YouTube channel showcasing a number of top-notch videos highlighting some borderline funny moments from our podcasts for your viewing pleasure. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today with us, we have Ray and Christian back with us again, and Nick. Hello, guys.
Yep.
How you guys doing?
Hello,
Good.
hello.
Pretty good.
Aloha. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
It
you.
always it's a good icebreaker there. We can jump right into it with our weird news of the week. This one is again from the New York Post. The title of this article, written by Brooke Cato, I have a 55-inch butt. I use it to smuggle booze into bars. Yep,
Oh, a 55-inch what?
ass. 55-inch
Oh,
ass. I think, I don't know, like the whole circumference. The whole thing is,
okay.
yeah, I think. And the title of the first line is this what it means to be the butt of a joke? That's yep,
Oh no.
yep. See, that's what I'm
Oh
talking.
my
My God. New
God.
York Post. I feel like when I bring these for the weird news of the week, I might ask everyone listening, can you guess what the first line's going to be? Because it has something like that all the time.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, it's a big hit TikToker has gone viral for revealing the ultimate party trick, stowing bottles of alcohol between her butt cheeks. Stephanie Oshiri shared her unique talent with her 210,000 followers, and ever since, the OnlyFans model has posted a slew of clips featuring the junk she can fit in her 55-inch trunk. Um, I wish I was joking, she said with a short laugh, while revealing her ability in a clip with more than 470,000 views. While it's humiliating, she admitted in the caption, she explained that it allowed her friends to drink cheaply. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, moving on. You asking for a drink at a concert, point of view, or something. I pulled this baby out from between my cheeks, she wrote on another TikTok, seemingly pull a bottle of whiskey from her behind. Uh,
Oh my
her
God.
baffling feat shocked her followers every time, while some joked that it was a bottle cervix. No way, someone astonished. Yeah, you can see there's a video on her TikTok. She just literally reaches out of the back of her pants and pulls like a half-gallon jug of rum or something like that.
What?
Yeah.
All right.
It's like I have so many questions. Someone trying that's a talent. Liquor's liquor. That's got to be uncomfortable. In later
Yeah.
clips, she proves she can fit more than just a glass bottle, including miscellaneous objects like cigarette lighters, books, and even a sword. I've heard the sword through the
A
sword,
sword.
sword through the through her ass. Sword.
Hell of a sheath.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder. The OnlyFans model previously claimed she was racking up between 2,000 and 3,000 every month with her revealing content on the subscription platform. She says, my body stands out. Obviously, the majority of my audience subscribes to me for my wide hips and bum. I definitely don't think I would be successful if my bum was smaller. I have my 55-inch my 55-inch booty to thank for my $45,000 a month paycheck. And apparently,
Holy.
yep, there it is. And apparently a cost-effective way to drink. And that's the article. Yes.
Man.
So $45,000 a month, and she shoves liquor bottles up her ass.
That
God
is
damn.
yep.
I might do
That's
that for that
Yeah.
much money.
I don't
say that's
think
America right
you
there.
probably get like spritzers, those little bottles you get like from like the on airplanes. That's what you usually
Right.
get,
Yeah.
I wonder
Yeah.
how many of those like 99-cent bottles she can
right?
stow away.
Yeah. Right.
Oh my god, yeah. So yes, that end of the article though, especially when for how much he made, I was like, good lord, man,
Outrageous.
45,000 a month. But yeah, it works. Yeah, she does it. Good for her. Good for her.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get right off to our subject. Something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now. It just there's a number of friends that have had experiences with this and whatnot. So I figured we'd start off with giving a little bit of a reading from the desk of Wikipedia, your one-stop shop for empirical and irrefutable evidence. Psychedelics are a subclass of a hallucinogenic drugs whose primary effect is to trigger non-ordinary mental states, known as psychedelic experiences or trips, or an apparent expansion of consciousness. Sometimes they are called classic hallucinogens, can't read that, serotonergic hallucinogens or psychedelics. Anyway, the term psychedelic is sometimes used more broadly to include various types of hallucinogens or those which are atypical or adjacent to psychedelia, such as MDMA or cannabis. True psychedelics cause specific psychological, visual, or auditory changes and oftentimes a substantially altered state of consciousness. Psychedelic states are often compared to meditative, psychodynamic, or transcendental types of alterations of mind. The classical psychedelics, the psychedelics with the largest scientific and cultural influence, are mescaline, LSD, psilocybin, and DMT. LSD in particular has long been considered the paradigmatic, I think, yeah, there's a lot of big words here, psychedelic compound to which all other psychedelics are often or usually compared. This is like reading right out of like a, I don't know, some medical journal. The term psychedelic was coined by the psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond, not related to the Osmonds. I checked. So, uh, during written correspondence with author Aldous Huxley, and presented to the New York Academy of Sciences by Osmond in 1957. It is irregularly derived from the Greek words soul and mind, to manifest, with the intended meaning mind manifesting. The implication being that psychedelics can reveal unused potentials of the human mind. The term was loathed by American ethnobotanist Richard Schutz, we all know him, but championed by American psychologist Timothy Leary. Just to give a little bit of where it all came from, starting off, I would say my first, I think maybe go around and, well, you know what, I'll go and I'll list a number of psychedelics, and just for starting off, like maybe the main one, LSD, or acid as it's sometimes known. My first experience with LSD, I believe it was someone's, like a friend of mine. It was Timmy. It might have been his. But like he had like a 2 hits of acid or something like that, just sitting around that he never took, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll take them. Prior to that, I'd only had mushrooms once, so I was a bit hesitant because I don't know. I just think starting off, it was, something that made in a lab as opposed to something that grows out of the ground or nature. I had that whole thing going, but it didn't really do much for me. I just kind of lay there on the couch and watched The Walking Dead. It didn't really have that much of an impact on me. My first time ever trying LSD. So I guess I go around, and if you guys have I'm sure you guys, remember your first time with LSD. Let's say I go around. Let's try Christian. I'll call on Christian here. Do you remember your first time you was using LSD?
Well, I really haven't used LSD. I guess
Ah,
I one time took like probably a fourth of a tab, like it was a tiny little piece,
yeah.
before band practice. And and while I was playing, I guess there was a moment that Jean-Luc and Tony were like, it definitely kicked in on you, bro. You just didn't feel it. I was like, all right, I don't know exactly what happened, but we also smoked weed right before then too. So I have no clue what.
Right.
There was
Yeah.
something. Yeah, one of the psychedelics. Just one's a
Yeah.
bit. It's a lesser extent, which I'll get to I think at the end here. All right. Nick, do you remember your first LSD experience? I know you told me about
Ye-
one of them, but I don't know if it was your first.
yeah. Well, my first one was, it was like with a group of people, kind of out by like in near Wanata when I lived there.
Hmm.
I was like maybe 21, something like that, 2021. And it was actually a really great time.
Yeah.
It was like a really clear night, and we were just kind of like laying out on the deck, and we were listening to Sigaros. Like, I had my laptop and I plugged it in. They were like listening to other music. And I remember just plugging in my laptop and stopping their music, and they got upset. And there was a little like thing there. You know how like you get that feeling that like this could be weird, this could be wrong, you know?
Yeah.
I
All
don't
the
know.
time.
I did it anyway just because I wanted to listen to the music.
Yeah.
But it just changed the whole dynamic. Everyone was really into it.
Hmm.
And that was my first experience. And it was great because where it was kind of like an open field, you know. There were no lights. There was no like light pollution. So there was a lot of like stars, that you could see. It was great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Ray, do you remember your first? You had experience with
I'm
LSD, right?
trying to. It's in that frame where I took acid. I was doing so much mushrooms and
Kind of thrown in. It's like a cherry on top.
yeah, I was doing a lot of mushrooms and oh my gosh, what's the DMT?
Mhm.
And I'm getting my wires crossed on which was the acid trip and the mushroom trip. I know you were involved.
Yeah.
And I know it was here and we were out in the band room because I remember looking at the pool table and just knowing how you know things when you're in those states. Just
Right.
knowing like, oh my God, the pool table is the whole universe.
I remember that
And I'm like,
conversation.
and I'm like moving the balls, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm moving galaxies right now. So, and then I remember looking at the wall, and in the wall, it's one of those textured walls in the band room there, and it has like a little bit of a sparkle to it. Well, of course, it had a lot of sparkle to it, and it was morphing.
Nice.
I just remember because I was doing so many mushrooms. I just remember comparing it to the mushrooms, and I the way I described it was that like mushrooms, at least for me, like you dive into the world and you're like zooming in on the experience, whereas acid, it felt like I was like tilting my head and looking at everything at a slightly different angle.
Interesting.
That's all that I remember about it. But I'm sure other things happened, but I don't remember if that was the mushroom trips or the acid trips.
I think
So-
there was one time that we took mushrooms, you and and Timmy only was, I think he had like a hit of acid. He was old as well. I don't know what his problem was. He never took it right away. And I know we hung out outside, and we were like, it was a clear night. We were doing like hand puppets. There's something to do with Play-Doh, in the cave or something like that.
Mhm.
And I remember hanging out in that band room as well. But I think it was like a mixture. Yeah, I think we might have did mushrooms and Timmy did acid, or maybe it was reversed. I don't remember.
Yeah, yes, he did do acid on a night that we did mushrooms. And he had like a breakthrough in his like, what am I doing with my life type of thing.
Yeah,
He's like,
right.
I gotta go.
Yeah, he just
I
got
gotta
up
go.
and-
Like what?
That's right. I was laying under the pool table, and all of a sudden it just takes off, and I was like, "Where'd Timmy go?" All right.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I remember that when you were looking at the pool table, it had like a white powder like over it. It looked like stars like on the felt. On the
Yeah.
pool table. And we were moving the pool balls around, and it was a little while later. We had come down, not a lot, but a little bit, and I decided to take the pool balls and like throw them into
That's
each
right.
other, and everyone was just watching me do it. I just
Oh
did
my
without thinking,
God.
and I was just like, because that's how I used to play pool, because my buddy didn't have any pool cues, so we would just take the balls and like take the cue ball and try and like spin it and like do like an English and have it curl around and hit a ball we're aiming for. And sometimes it'd work, and it's like, how's he doing that? I remember that. That was funny. All right. Yeah. The next one, obviously, we mentioned a few times. Mushrooms. I remember my first time taking mushrooms. It was an eighth. I think. I agree with. I don't know if it was Alan Watts said this or if it was what's the other guy's name. He's really prominent and really big on mushrooms.
Terrence McKenna.
McKenna. That's it. Where he says, just take a bunch. Like your first time, take a bunch. A heroic
Yeah, the
dosage.
heroic dose. Yeah.
Yeah.
A heroic dose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, you kind of just take less and less because the singular, like that first time doing it is probably your best attempt. It might be diminishing results in some regards. After that, I think that was his theory. It was either him or Alan Watts that was talking about it, but
No, it was Terrence McKenna.
it was Terrence McKenna. Yeah. So I was like, the first time I took it, whole eighth, and I remember walking down to a local pizzeria place, and we were just kind of stand on the corner waiting for pizza to be done. And it was the very first time. and maybe I'd thought of this before, but it was like the first time that I had like a full realization, if that's the best way of explaining it. And someone walked behind me, and it was immediately like, I've never seen that person before. They've never seen me, as far as I know. This is our first time knowing that the other exists, but she's, or he or she, whatever, like spent at least, I'd say they're like 24 or 5. That's 25 years on this, all the everything that they've gone through, everything that they're gonna go through, everything that for just this brief moment. There I am, there she is, and then it's gone. And I thought, what the hell is it? Because like there's just, and then I believe the word is sonder.
Yeah.
Is what it gets.
Yep.
And that was my first like idea of sonder. I didn't know there was a word for it, but it was just like this. Do you realize all this? Just 25. It's just crazy about. And then she'll go on, and it won't be any. But at least I know that they exist now. Something that looks like that, at least for me, exists. That's pretty much all I could. But this the overwhelmingness of like the whole thing. I was just blew my mind. All outside on a corner, right outside of Papa John's. So yeah, that's usually where it happens. Let's see here, Christian. Do you have your like a first time taking mushrooms? Remember what that was like?
Yeah, so the first time was pretty much the only time. I microdosed after that a few times. A pretty good amount actually, but the first time was with Ray and Tony, and I definitely went into it with like wanting to learn something. It wasn't like a recreational type of thing at all. I was actually pretty afraid to even do it.
I remember that.
I felt like I was ready. Man, it was like the first half was the best experience of my life, and then the second half was the scariest. I remember like going in, and they put Incubus on, and I started like playing on the djembe, and it just, that's before it kind of really kicked in, and it started to as I was playing, and then I felt like I was just like there was no separation, which I felt that way with music without mushrooms, but there's definitely still something different when it really kicks in and you're like, you're not doing anything consciously to be a part of the music, and then setting it down and then feeling wet. And I'm like, why am I wet right now? And Ray's like, we're always wet, man. And and there's like it's just the highlights. I just love like those magnet balls, just feeling like, oh my God, I understand gravity. And then opening the door to the sun, and then I'm just sitting. I was thinking about this the other day actually too. When I felt the sun rays on me, I just started dancing. And I look over, and Ray and Tony are just cracking up, laughing, falling on the ground. And I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, why were they fucking laughing?
Because you can't smile big enough.
Right.
That's what I always say. You have to laugh because when you're in that state, you just can't smile anymore. It's like a kid just having fun,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting there and having like a philosophical conversation with Ray and Tony. I saw the net in the sky, whatever the fuck that is. I took Tony's stick and threw it like a spear, and I thought I hit a cloud. I tried to like dive into Tony's like little Gandalf hat, and I'm like, there's a whole other world in there, bro. Yep. And then we were sitting in the kitchen dining room area, and I was like, I love my wife. And then everything started to go, oh shit. Like I started thinking about death, and my parents are gonna die, and what have I been doing? Like I've been so preoccupied with things and distracting myself that I wasn't like really present with my family. And so then I started calling my mom and stuff, and I just let them know like I'm on mushrooms and I just want you to know.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, are you gonna die? And of course, everyone has like the wisest words.
Yeah.
when you're listening to them high, you're just
Right.
I feel like sometimes I disregard even what my mom says, and maybe it's because of my experiences with like her idealism with religion and things like that. But then like when you're in that state, you're like, God, she has wisdom though,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about myself, man. I learned that, I knew I was depressed, but um I realized that a lot of it is from actual just anxiety. Like I look down and I'm like, oh my God, I bite my nails all the time. Like why?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize like I was actually an anxious person. So it taught me a shit ton. Like it helped me not get over, but it like thoughts of suicide, like very strong thoughts of suicide. I learned kind of just how to like let it wash off of me.
Hmm.
And it still comes, of course, but yeah, it helped a lot, man. It was one of the best decisions of my life. And I still think that I might get in a car accident and die one day and then wake up in that fucking band room.
It all
So,
starts over again.
right.
Yeah.
It's like a checkpoint, I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
Like maybe the times you do certain psychedelics, you're just
Right.
setting a checkpoint for
Right.
yourself.
You gotta try it again. Save the game later. That way you move. You don't have to go back. You can save it.
Right.
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 Nick, do you remember your first time taking mushrooms?
Yeah, my first time doing mushrooms was actually my first time ever doing psychedelics. And it was with Tim Nelson and Baller.
Oh, okay.
And it started out with we were watching, what was it? Space Jam.
Yes.
And
Not what I was expecting.
and everyone, and it apparently was hitting Baller and Tim already, but it wasn't hitting me at all. And I was like, nothing's happening. And they're like, well, let's go outside. Let's go in the garage, let's go have a cigarette or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And I opened up my pack of cigarettes, and it was new. Like it was completely new. Like I just freshly opened pack. And I just remember opening it up and looking at it and looking at how perfect everything was, like instantly. I just noticed it. I was like, I just said out loud, like, this is a beautiful brand new pack of cigarettes right here, like I was so excited. And then they realized that, oh, it hit him.
Oh, it better.
Like, and then I was like, oh yeah, this, and then I like look around me, like doing this sort of thing. I haven't even taken out a cigarette. And I'm like, look down at the ground, and I'm like looking everywhere else, and I'm like, I feel like this is the lowest part of the garage, just by like looking at like all the oil stains. That it just seemed that way, right? And yeah, they knew that it just hit me right, just right then and there from that. And it was such a great time. We put on Tim had like this old jukebox in the garage, and we just selected from what songs and discs were in there. I'm trying to remember what else. Anything else that really happened? Oh yeah, Baller. So it was like a fly that landed on his finger, and I remember him just staring at the fly. It was great, man. Great.
Ray, do you remember yours? Was it with me by chance, or I feel like it might have been with Nick
Yes.
and I.
I think Nick was there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Was Tim there?
Tim might have been there as well.
Yeah. Tim
Yeah,
was
I
there.
think it was Tim, you, and Nick. Yeah, I got some from a friend in South Bend. And I don't know if I supplied them all, or you had some too that you just happened to take at the same. I don't know. I don't know the details of it. But I do remember I've always, it takes it forever to hit me. And then that caused me trouble later on. But so I'm like, no, I don't know. Maybe it's another myth like marijuana.
Oh, that's right.
Like I always felt like shit didn't affect me. Well, obviously, eventually it did. And I started to kind of freak out a little bit. And I text the friend that I got him from. And he's like, it's just a tool. You just write it out,
Yep.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And then you guys started playing Sigur Rós, and all I remember, and I probably I think I spent most of the night just on the floor,
Yep. Face down.
just
Yeah.
face down, just laughing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was so intense because my dad was literally dying,
Yeah.
at the time that I did it. And I just have my arms like outspread, and
Oh yeah.
and I'm just laughing. And it wasn't because anything was funny. It was like I said earlier, like you just can't smile any bigger. So you
Right.
got to do something else. And I felt like I was hugging the whole world, and
Yeah.
everything just felt like, okay, yeah, it's gonna be okay. No matter what, it's gonna be okay. And there was just so I remember looking at the walls, and like the way you would look at the walls, like different angles
Mm.
would totally change what they look like. And I'm like, my God, everything's just in our, everything's just changed.
Mhm.
Everything's just in our head. Everything's just perception, blah, blah, blah. And at that, so I had studied obviously philosophy in school, so many philosophies, and I like understood them from a intellectual level.
Mhm.
But when I did that, I like felt what all of these like philosophies were actually talking about.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, this is what they're talking about. All these people, these like different religions and different meditators and things, all these areas that they were able to access. It was like, this is it. They weren't lying. They weren't,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then of course later on I kind of analyzed some of that stuff too. But
Mm.
yeah, that first time it definitely was like oh my God, everybody has to do this. You know what I mean? So I became kind of an evangelical type of
Yeah.
person because
Yeah.
of it.
Never go full Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the same night, but I think it was because it was really cold outside, and I started to get worried about you, but
Oh,
not
yeah.
too worried. You were outside running around.
Yeah, he had like
Yep.
the hat on. He needed to get gloves on.
And a
I
hat.
believe.
Did he have a hat?
And
Or
I
was it
had my
just a hat?
robe.
You had
And
your
the
robe. I
robe,
remember the
yep,
robe
yep.
just flopping in the wind. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Running
went
out.
out to the fence, which seemed like it took forever to get to the fence. Yeah, I forget. That is that night. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm like, Chris, look through the cracks of the fence. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
the whole other world. And you're like, dude, I don't know what you're seeing, but I'm fucking cold. I was like, this is amazing.
I was also tripping at the time, rest assured, but that's me tripping. Dude, what the hell are you
Right.
talking
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know what you mean with the understanding on a deeper level more than intellectual. Because like what I was saying with like Sonder, I knew that. Obviously, I know that everyone's
Right.
goes there, but like you understood it on a different
Yeah.
level, and it
Yeah.
just like you oh my God, and you realize how profound that is. I guess.
Right.
I remember being really just happy, like really just over the moon, and I could not wait. He loved everything. I loved everybody, except for one guy who kind of got on my nerves, and so I left, and I said, I got to get out of here. And Brad was like, where are you going, man? I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna walk around town. And so I'm tripping balls, and I take off from his apartment, and it's 8 o'clock at nighttime. I'm just walking around, enjoying the night, not a care in the world. I end up talking to an old friend for a little bit, who he doesn't really indulge in that sort of thing. So it was kind of a awkward conversation. What are you doing here?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm tripping right
not
now.
much. Are you serious? You need to call somebody? No, you don't have to call anybody. I'm fine. Yeah. And then I just walked back, and no, it was fine. And I drove home, and I remember feeling different, feeling refreshed, feeling like a weight had been lifted, sort of deal. It was this just this crazy sort of like euphoria, and you smile because you can't, or you laugh because you can't smile anymore. It's like that. I'd say like a childlike wonder. It's this amazement at absolutely everything, even though you've been around for a little while now, you've seen it over years, but it's like, like seeing it from a different perspective. And so, yeah, it makes everything just seem in a way it is much better.
I remember it took like a week for like leaves and to look not like almost plasticky and wet all the time. It was so different how everything looked, especially like in the very like in like a natural grass. I remember like Even just pissing on the ground outside and being like, Mother Nature just thanked me for that. Like
Yeah. There's one time I took mushrooms just on my own, and Ray and Jamie, his wife, they left to go somewhere, I don't remember, but they were going to be gone like all day. So I took mushrooms and just hung around the house, and I went and laid down on the grass outside and looked up at the clouds. It was a pretty normal sort of. It was like, it wasn't like overly strong, but it was almost like microdosing in a way. I remember that was the one time that I kind of like, and I was laying down on the grass. This sounds like a good idea, and then all of a sudden I start getting bit by bugs, and then I'm like, oh no, no, ooh. Oh, that's right. And I go look at a tree, and that's when like how everything seems like it's breathing. The walls are moving, everything like that. So you go under a tree, and your vision is skewed that way. So everything looks like it would you consider maybe breathing. So you go under the tree, and it's got, let's say this one has apples, and you see this fruit, and it looks like the fruit is pulsating, which is kind of true in a way because it's it's just living, it's an organism here. So you can attribute that to your intellectual part of it, but at the same time, I knew that it's not actually pulsating, at least that I can see. At least when I'm not on mushrooms. But just the whole, like, looking at everything in a different light, I think it's incredibly beneficial. We can move on to. I got a couple more here to talk about here for mescaline. I've never had mescaline. I don't know if anyone here has. We haven't. We just move on because I have nothing to say about mescaline. I've never taken it. The one after that is
I've never.
Oh, sorry, go on. Oh, you've never taken it?
No, I've never. It's on my list though.
Yeah.
I stay away from toxic masculinity.
God.
I hate.
Jesus. Put your hand out. There you go. There you go.
The next one I got DMT. DMT. Now, Ray, you said that you had been taking DMT. I have only taken it once, and that was with you and Tony. It was incredibly cold and windy, and we couldn't get the lighter to go. And I remember just sitting there like trying, go for it. Oh, can't do it.
And weren't you already tripping on mushrooms too?
I think so. I was on something. I was either high or one or the other. Yeah. Just like, oh, let's do that. And I was like, I didn't get much out of the experience. But you had been taking DMT, so I don't know if Christian or Nick have. So you might be the only one to talk much about this, if you wouldn't mind. Your experiences with DMT.
The thing about all of them to me is they like seem to open up a door, and then you can take any of them and reach that state. But the first time I did DMT, oh man. So the guy that gave it to me, he brings it over. I believe I did it here first. And he gives me the pipe, and he's like, you're gonna puff on it and try to get as good as you can. And I'm not good at smoking. So I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this right, And then he says, I'll be here to take it from you, and I'll need to take it from you. I'm like, yeah, right, okay. And then and he has this pipe that's like decorated, it's like one of those glass pipes. Oh. So I do exactly what he says. I inhale it and like hold it in and then blow it out, and then I do it again, and literally on that second one, that pipe started moving, and and I just sit back, and it's like when the camera is zooming in or out, but it's actually physically moving in an opposite direction, so it has a weird zooming but not zooming effect.
Oh,
and yeah, it was like a weird,
interesting.
And then it was just like, it's so hard to describe. I don't really have crazy visuals like some other people. They go on crazy trips and see aliens and all that stuff. It was more just like the feeling of things. And there was someone, I thought it was me, and I thought it was the guy that gave it to me, saying, remember to breathe. And then when I was done, I'm like, were you telling me to breathe? And he's like, no. I'm like, was I saying it? He's like, no. So there's weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was what I always described it as, is like the full mushroom trip in like 15 minutes.
Oh,
You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I guess you could have a bad experience, but it's so fast and it's such a like a rocket ship that you
Mhm.
can't, you know, or like, you know, like with a mushroom trip, you can try to hold on to the edge and,
Yeah.
you know, hold on to your ego. Like, no, I don't want to do this. No, you know, I don't want to melt into the ground or whatever, you know, but with that, it's just like, nope. They push you fucking, you know, 50 feet off the cliff. You have no choice. You're falling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're just in it. And yeah, you feel all kinds of emotions. At least I did. But I,
Yeah.
you know, I was going through, like I said, my dad was dying and then he had recently died while I was doing stuff. So
Hmm.
I remember one time at his house, I was just like on the ground crying and then crawling, like just like,
Oh,
oh my God, you know, just like
yeah.
having conversations with, you know, with my father, and then like different songs, it would turn into the voices of my father,
Oh,
you know, and it's obviously
yeah.
not him singing to me, but
Right.
it would be him, you know. It's just so intense, so intense.
Man.
And I don't know why anyone would ever want to do that while they're already on mushrooms. So,
Right. Yeah.
and I know that's what Tony tried to do with you, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, I just didn't get anything out of it really. I
Yeah.
was really hoping for something and nothing really happened. That's crazy though. Yeah, and it's only 15 minutes, which was why I was like, well, worst case scenario, it's only for 15 minutes, so you know, I'll just be
Yeah,
okay.
and I mean, it seems like a lot longer,
Oh, I'm sure.
but it's not like the bad, like mushroom or acid trips where you're like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? You know, like because you
Right.
don't even have you
Right.
don't have enough control to even,
You're not even thinking
like I
about
said, you
time
can't
and
hold
no
on.
no concept of time, and you can't even think about
Yeah,
time.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and I think I gotta say, I don't think I ever had a bad, like a trip where I was like, I got to get out of this with DMT. You know, I
Okay.
did with mushrooms. Um, and I wouldn't say they were bad trips. I always learned a great deal, and that's why I had the bad trip. You know, there was something psychologically that I needed to work out, or
Yeah.
still need to work out. You know,
Yeah.
but with the DMT, you just don't have you're not in it long enough, and you can't hold on to your ego at all because it's taken from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting.
So.
All right, I've got one more here. These are the lesser extent, these psychedelic lesser extent. Cannabis, marijuana. It's funny that I think the first time you smoked pot, Ray, I think was with Nick and I. I had just bought some from a friend, and we drove straight over to your mom's house. I think you were living with her at the time, I think. And out on the deck, we were just like, all right, here you go. And it was some pretty good stuff. And it didn't affect you at all. And you were just like, I don't know what it is. And I was like, son of a bitch. I was like, man, I was really expecting.
Well, I mean, because you guys were like, yeah, it's affecting you. But like, I'm like, I don't know. I just feel tired because it was really late.
Right.
And yeah, I had done it like a tiny bit. Oh my God, when I was a teenager. But that I would say that would have been the first. That's actually the only time that I actually sat down and smoked weed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I just chalk it up to like I'm not good at the whole inhaling it, holding it in, and I'm just
Right.
like coughing, you know.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So that might be what that is, but that's why I was like, oh, it's a hoax when I did the mushrooms. Like, oh, okay, it's the same thing. It's not gonna. Oh God. Yeah.
Well, it's getting me worried there because I was like, damn, he's like impenetrable. There's nothing we can do. Give this guy his body to science. I don't know what the hell this is. Doesn't matter what you give him. You know? So yeah. I think I remember my first time smoking weed was in high school or post high school. A buddy rolled a joint on what's the book called? Kurt Cobain's journals. They had his journals and they had written it out. He wrote it on that, and I didn't really feel anything. And then the next time we smoked, I felt a great deal, and I thought I was gonna die. I was seeing like colors, and my heart was beating 100 miles an hour, and I was just like, I was in the back seat of a car, being pushing up on the driver's seat, not even realizing I was doing that, being like, I think we got to go to the hospital. This isn't good. This doesn't feel good. And it's like,
It was laced with something.
That's what we thought. It was like, that was laced with something.
Yep.
And then
That's
the guy
always the
said,
fear. Yep.
well, and the guy was like, you know what? Now that you say that, he did get in trouble for lacing some with PCP once. And I was like, son of a bitch.
Oh my
And I was like,
god.
the second, like, I'm not saying this is laced with PCP because no one else was having those issues that I was having.
Right.
Yeah, it just freaked me out a second. But yeah, cannabis, it's a lesser extent. There is a, excuse me, hallucinogenic quality to it. A lot of times, like if you're on acid or you take an acid trip or mushroom trip and you want to extend it, you smoke a little weed and it just, boom, you're right back in it for another half an hour, 45 minutes. It just,
Right.
yeah, I don't know why, but it does. Excuse me. Yeah, it's easily, I mean, I don't want to get into any sort of like, legal stuff, it's legal in some states, not legal in others. Don't want to get into any of that, but just on the drug itself, everyone here has enjoyed some cannabis. I think we've all enjoyed it together at some time, at one point or another. So, do you remember the first time you smoked weed, Christian?
Yeah, the first time it didn't affect me. At least I didn't feel like it did. The second time I just got the munchies, which is weird because most of the time I smoked weed, I actually didn't get the munchies. I actually didn't have like an appetite. But so the second time is kind of how I think of the first time. And I was at Danny Wagner's house actually. And
Oh my God.
and it was with Turan and them. And I just
Nice.
remember like me and Turan going inside and playing one of the UFC games. And I was kicking Turan's ass so bad. And I wasn't even trying. And I was just like, I was barely even looking because I was falling over laughing so fucking hard. And he's like, "How are you doing this right now?"
Turan.
And then I remember like listening to the Beatles at that moment and being like, "I get it now," because for some reason like, the Beatles, I didn't get it with them. And yeah, dude, that was one of the greatest times of my life. It was amazing, man.
Nick, do you remember the first time you smoked weed?
Yeah, I do actually. Just like pretty much everyone, like it didn't affect me, right? I was at this party at Tim Nelson's house my sophomore year in high school.
Okay.
And I remember like it was just this joint being passed around by the fire, and I hit it a couple times and just nothing happened. But I did smoke a little, like technically the first time I got high when I smoked was several months later, still as a sophomore. And I remember it was snowing out, and we smoked out of like a pop can.
Oh yeah, the
like we
pop
made
can.
like a pop can sort of bowl.
Like a bong.
Yeah.
That was the first time I did it too.
Yeah,
where
right,
Danny
yeah.
poked
Yeah.
into the
What is it?
Dr. Pepper can.
You dent the can, you poke holes in it with like a knife,
And
or
then you make
support.
a carb,
Yep.
on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you use the mouthpiece that's already there for yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And I remember we were passing that around and they were trying to make me laugh as I was hitting it, and they did, and I blew into the can and it
Oh
all
no.
No.
Oh God.
yeah. But we were already just gone at that point. And I remember it was snowing out, like I was saying, and like it just felt like I was on a different planet, like an ice planet.
Oh.
Because I was like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. And the last one I'm going to mention is salvia. Has anyone tried salvia before?
And I will
No.
never.
I would not recommend it.
Yeah, I will never do that.
I did it once. I
Mhm.
didn't know what it was necessarily, well, at all. Let's just be honest here. I didn't know what it was. I knew it was like a weed in a sense, but like different. That's what they told me. And
Jesus.
Brad and his friend David, we drove. I drove actually. I took him to Maryville. We went to the mall, and in one of the
Yeah.
smoke shops, they were just selling salvia. And
Right.
it was like, okay. And so I bought some salvia, and then we left, and we went back to his place, Brad and David's apartment, and there was a handful of us there. We all smoked some salvia, and it hit me, and it was the craziest feeling. I was like, there's like this tremendous pressure of like it felt like the ceiling was closing in, the walls were closing in. It was like something was like like slowly like confining me, but there's nothing confining me, and everyone's laughing. And then someone was actually recording. There's like a video. It's probably gone now. There was someone was recording me because they couldn't.
Yeah.
They thought it was really funny. I thought it was funny too because this is just like this is everyone's like laughing at me. Oh, you're all right. You know, that's part of the whole thing. And I was like, okay, you know, it really feels like it's crushing me right now. Yeah, it's like,
You're like Morty.
yeah, I don't think this is a good idea. Yeah. But like, I think Brad's sister tried something, and she just completely had a meltdown. And her boyfriend at the time, I think, had to like console her, and it was like a whole thing. But yeah, that was enough for me. I smoked salvia once. I was like, no, I'm never doing that again. We can get into like well, it's interesting that Ray said that there's no such thing as like a bad trip, which I understand the thinking behind that. I think that's true. And I wanted to bring up bad trips, but I'll do that later. We move on here to a section called psychedelic therapy, which is like kind of a thing that was starting off strong and then got the axe, and then recently has been kind of brought back to the forefront here. But psychedelic therapy or psychedelic assisted therapy is the proposed use of psychedelic drugs to treat mental disorders. As of 2021, psychedelic drugs are controlled substances in most countries, and psychedelic therapy is not legal, available outside clinical trials, with some exceptions. The procedure for psychedelic therapy differs from that of therapies using conventional psychiatric medications. All conventional medications are usually taken without supervision at least once daily. In contemporary psychedelic therapy, the drug is administered in a single session, or sometimes up to 3 sessions, in a therapeutic context. The therapeutic team prepares the patient for the experience beforehand and helps them integrate insights from the drug experience afterwards. After ingesting the drug, the patient normally wears eye shades and listens to music to facilitate focus on the psychedelic experience, with the therapeutic team interrupting only to provide reassurance if adverse effects such as anxiety or disorientation arise. As of 2022, the body of high-quality evidence on psychedelic therapy remains relatively small, and more larger studies are needed to reliably show the effectiveness and safety of psychedelic therapies' various forms and applications. On the basis of favorable early results, ongoing research is examining proposed psychedelic therapies for conditions including major depressive disorder and anxiety and depression linked to terminal illness. The United States FDA has granted breakthrough therapy status, which is a big thing, which expedites the assessment of promising drug therapies for potential approval to psilocybin therapy for treated resistant depression and major depressive disorder. So what they do is they give you a basic microdosing of sorts, and they lay you down on a couch, and everyone's it's like a nice setting. Everyone's there, knowledgeable. There's nobody to worry about, and they kind of just take you through maybe a traumatic episode in your life, and people and on mushrooms, if the setting is right, they dig into it, and then they dig a little deeper, and they come to realize, certain conclusions that they maybe otherwise not have reached. And they've got a team of therapists there to help work through that. From what I've seen on it, it has incredible results. I mean, this is the sort of thing, I think it was like in the early or late 50s, early 60s, they were starting to do this sort of thing. We had some hang-ups too, where they were using these drugs to treat depression and such. And then I think it was like, it was before Nixon, but they got axed essentially, and it was put on a a federal ban list essentially, along with marijuana and all that prior to that. But I think I would suggest for people that are okay with it, or open mind, that it's definitely worth looking into. I don't know if it's for everybody as much as I'd like it to be. There are certain people, I just don't know if depending on maybe the situation's different, but depending on who it is, I don't know if I necessarily want them taking some mind-altering drug, unless they had like a incredibly safe setting with people who are knowledgeable and know what's going on.
Right.
I just don't think. I think that seems to be, because I don't know about you guys, but I've had issues where, for me, there was I had like an episode where I was on mushrooms. It was kind of a strange thing altogether, because one of the person that invited me was a friend that I met through Nick, who was actually like Nick's age. He's younger than me. I like him. He's a good guy. him and his girlfriend was like turning 21 or something like that. And instead of going out drinking like they normally would, people would, they decided they were all going to take mushrooms. And I was like, yeah, I'll join in on that, and I did. And I was surrounded by a bunch of people I didn't know except for like one person, and then they started going around and asking me to like do impressions of people that they knew and like do like a song and dance sort of deal. And it was like I'm like putting on a show for people that I don't know.
Right. Like put
You
in
know,
a quarter.
yeah, and I'm in an apartment I've never been to before.
Right.
I've never, I don't know, and I tried to go outside.
I
to
remember
get some
this.
fresh
I remember
air.
this story because like this one of the kids there, I think it was the girl's like brother or something, had something on his arm and he thought he had like a reaction, and they were contemplating whether or not they needed to call the an ambulance, right? I think I
Oh,
remember
right,
that's
yeah,
what
no,
you were
yeah,
telling me. Yeah,
yeah. He no, and his arm
yeah,
was swollen up. I'm not sure what was
right,
happening. He's like, "Whoa, something's going on with my arm," and I'm like, "What the hell?" He's like,
yeah.
"Should we go to the hospital? We need to go to the hospital." I was like, "No, you guys should not be driving." I was like, "Holy
Right,
shit!"
right,
Yeah, so like
yeah,
in a safe setting with people who are professional, I think it could do amazing things for people who and like depressive disorders, anxieties, depression. I mean, I think Christians already said that it helped him a great deal. I do people often regard their first big psychedelic experience as like a big moment in their life. It's a milestone. I always can link it. Oh, this, uh, plant a flag there. This is a big moment. It's usually, especially if they've had an extremely good one. Typically, most people do. But there's
yeah. I was gonna say not necessarily like the first one. Um, it's like one of the trips,
right.
right, was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, I think there's the potential therapeutic effects that psychedelic substances, which may cause therapeutic uses, include psilocybin, LSD, and mescaline. During the 50s and the 60s, lack of informed consent in some scientific trials on psychedelics led to significant, long-lasting harm to some participants. I believe, was it the FBI or the CIA? Someone gave a bunch of people acid and didn't tell them.
It
Right?
was like MK Ultra or something.
Is that
Yep.
what it is?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it just
Yeah, they're trying to do like mind control and all kinds of weird
Right.
things with
right.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help out when you're trying to get that. I imagine people, what the hell are they doing? Mind control, acid? Yeah. So
There,
Yeah.
there's like a whole city in I forget where it was, like Europe or Africa. I know those are two completely different fucking places. But
big
somewhere
We're not
not
cities.
Yeah.
somewhere not in America. But
not even on the same planet, dude.
but they like literally put the acid like in the water or something.
Oh Lord.
And so everybody in the whole town, like, I guess it went into like mass hysteria.
Right.
Holy moly.
God, I don't remember who that was. I think it was in actually like in a Scandinavian country, but
On the other hand, the Beatles, their first acid trip, they didn't know it was a spike situation, and I can't remember if it was George or John. They said that's actually the best way they could have done it, because at the time all the negative stuff going on about drugs,
Right.
like you just start off on a bad trip already, whereas when it was just like thrown on them, they were like, whoa, dude,
Right. Yeah.
but that is so important, because there's so much baggage, even for people
right.
that are free thinkers like us. It's still ingrained
Mhm.
in us. There's this negative thing already from us doing it,
Mhm.
and it being illegal on top of that
Yeah.
you're already
Yeah.
there's always going to be that potential of it being a bad trip just because of the society.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was Nixon, and I think
Was it Nixon?
unfortunately it was Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert were so adamant
Right.
about everybody doing it. They're like, everybody needs to do it. Everybody needs to, then Timothy Leary had the whole tune in, tune
out.
in, tune
Yeah.
out, drop out, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
tune in. And I think a lot of people just took that all the wrong way. And then, all the people in power were threatened by all all that, and they were like, "Oh, this shit needs to be illegal."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think they pushed too hard, and unfortunately, that lost 50 years of healing that could have been done
Yeah.
with it. And thanks, Richard Doplin is the guy with MAPS right now that's really getting things changed to, where it's at least going to be in therapies and
Yeah, it got breakthrough status.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard Doplin with MAPS. MAPS is what does MAPS stand for?
Is that
well,
rhetorical?
anyway.
Because I don't know. But we'll find that out later.
Yeah.
We'll post it in link below. No, I agree. I think that it's incredibly beneficial for I pretty much assume that, or not assume, I pretty much think that you probably, it's not going to hurt you too much, I wouldn't think. But as long as you're with in a safe place with people that have done it and you trust,
Right.
you shouldn't, have a bad time. There are times where I would actually recommend you being in a decent headspace, a good headspace, preferably. I think if you're
Yep.
horribly depressed and just on the verge of, I don't know, suicide or something like that,
Right.
I see it. You could have a really, really bad trip because you just caught in a loop where you just can't get out of. And especially
Right.
if you were to do something and you were depressed and you were to take it, have somebody there to help walk you through it. There's a lot of times people are depressed, they'll take it, they're by themselves because they're depressed or something, and they don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's I think having people around you that you trust only helps your case in this regard. And I recommend going out to nature if you can. I just hanging out.
Yeah, but not alone. Not alone.
But not alone. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
alone, yeah.
Yeah. But I think there needs to be consent. Ideally, you don't want to just drug people. I know that idea
Right.
that
Yeah.
idea was floated at a bachelor party, I'm pretty sure, by a
Oh
friend of
my
ours.
God.
It was like, shouldn't we? Wouldn't it be funny if we just
No,
put this in
no,
the
it wouldn't be
acid?
funny
No.
at all.
No.
It would not be
Tell me you
funny
didn't
at
do
all.
that. Yeah. People need to know when that's going on because that
Yep.
can really fuck with them. Some people have long-lasting effects, especially if it's a really bad trip. Ideally, if you're gonna do it, you got to take it seriously, and it's more serious than you would take probably any other drug, I'd say. It can have
Set
some
and
effects.
setting is the thing. Set and setting.
Let's see, where was I left off at? Since the 1950s and 60s, lack of informed consent. Okay, since then, research regarding the effectiveness of psychedelic therapy has been conducted under strict and ethical guidelines with fully informed consent and a pre-screening to avoid people with psychosis taking part. There's some
Right.
fears about people that already have like issues in their head like that, like what do you call it, like schizophrenia or something, some sort of psychosis in that regard. Taking these drugs can have an adverse effect. It might not be, especially if they're taking medication along with it. That can't help. Although
Right.
the history behind these substances has hindered research into their potential medicinal value, scientists are now able to conduct studies and renew research that was halted in the 70s. Okay, yeah. Some research has shown that these substances have helped people with such mental disorders as OCD and PTSD, which is huge. I think that, let's see, alcoholism, depression, and cluster headaches, a number of things that it's helped with. Let's see, OCD, that's, I don't know how many percentage of the population, but I imagine there's a large portion that the population would be greatly helped if they could get access to this sort of treatment. Or PTSD, veterans, soldiers coming back from, I think there's probably no bigger proponent. Well, maybe there probably is, but it's definitely a big one. There's a lot of veterans that are all for taking mushrooms and using it for therapy in this regard because it
Right.
has helped them in such a way. They're able to recall the, firefights that they were involved in, the losing friends, and all that's the horrors of war. They're able to go through that and work through it, which otherwise their brain blocks out. They're able to talk about it more openly when under, psilocybin or whatnot. Alcoholism, I've heard about that for years. It helps people, cure their alcoholism. It makes them not want to drink. I mean, I didn't drink too much to begin with, but I tell you, taking mushrooms certainly didn't make me want to drink more.
That's so true. That is so true.
it just
I always end up falling back into drinking because because mushrooms is illegal.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. When you do it, you're like, why do I ever want to dull my senses
Yeah.
when this like enhances my senses, enhances my thinking, and I don't forget, all of it, and I don't want to just go to sleep.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and with just depression on its own, if you're a little bit depressed and you take some mushrooms, you'll probably work that out with for the trip's even over, and you'll be infinitely better. It's like taking a refresher. It's like a rewiring your brain in a way where it's like hitting a refresh or restart
Right.
button in a sense,
Yeah.
where it just
Right.
kind of clears the cache and you're just good to go. You don't have all this crap built up. I've taken acid a number of times where, like, let's say I go through something and it's really difficult towards, like, after a little while, after I'm no longer like in like a deep sadness or whatever, um still not okay but much better, I take acid or mushrooms and I'm usually better, just 100% better by the time it's done, because it's just kind of how it's like a tool. I just use it as in that regard. I know that this is going to clear my head in this way, and you just find out, you just come up with that same sort of, like, it's like a nice reminder everything's going to be okay. That's kind of the end of the end result. I don't have cluster headaches, but I imagine it does wonders for that too, so I couldn't speak to that, but yeah, just the number of things that it can help and has helped, and people that have talked about it's also, it's not addictive. All that's we'll get to that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but yeah, it says it's long been known that psychedelics promote neurite growth and neuroplasticity and are potent psychoplastogens. That's a long word. There is evidence that psychedelics induce molecular and cellular adaptations related to neuroplasticity, and that these could potentially underlie therapeutic benefits. Psychedelics have also been shown to have potent anti-inflammatory activity and therapeutic effects in animal models of inflammatory diseases, including asthma
Huh.
and cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Apparently, it is, yeah, but that's long been known. I guess I never knew that. So, the
Neither.
innumerable benefits, but there are adverse effects. But despite the contrary perception of much of the public, psychedelic drugs are not addictive and are physiologically safe. As of 2016, there have been no deaths due to overdose of LSD, psilocybin, or mescaline. Risks do exist during a unsupervised psychedelic experience. However, Ira Byock wrote in 2018 in the Journal of Palliative Medicine that psilocybin is safe when administered to a properly screened patient and supervised by a qualified professional with appropriate set and setting. However, he called for an abundance of caution because in the absence of these conditions, a range of negative reactions is possible, including fear, a prolonged sense of dread, or full panic. He notes that driving or even walking in public can be dangerous during a psychedelic experience because of impaired hand-eye coordination and fine motor control. Stop there for a second. I've spent most of the time when I did trip, I was always out in public. Always. I don't know why. I just was like, I'm okay with that. I've always been okay with that. I went to Chicago and watched a concert.
I never experienced impaired motor control. That's the strange thing.
No.
It was always, I don't know if it was because it was a relaxed state. I was always way better at things than I should have been. Like, all of a sudden I could do handstands. Like, what? You
Oh,
know
right.
what I
No,
mean?
absolutely. Yeah. No, there's a guy who pitched like a perfect game on acid.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just everything's, yeah. So it's an interesting. Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's not a thing, but that's just something I never experienced.
I mean, I think with weed, I've become a better drummer. When I drive, like, the only thing is, like, you know how they say impaired motor skills or whatever, but like, even when you're sober and you're driving, sometimes you have that thing where you're like, was I not paying attention the past 5 minutes?
Oh yeah. Like, how did I even get here?
Right. But,
Oh, boy.
with weed, you're like, every 2 seconds, you're like, was I just paying attention? Was I just paying attention? And then you just realize you're going like 40 on 49, And so I feel like it enhances your focus,
I guess the only unsafe part that I've experienced is because I was coming down from it at one point and I was driving at night and I'm like, oh my God, those lights, like the lights of the other cars in front of me. Like
Yeah.
I was like, they're so cool. Like, how are we doing that? You know what I mean? But I wasn't like physically impaired, I guess. But who
Um,
knows?
Well, I
I
think
definitely would not recommend driving while you're tripping.
no, I
That's
couldn't.
for
No,
I
definitely not.
I wouldn't.
some of my favorite memories, though, honestly. I know that sounds terrible, but listening to fucking like Radiohead while driving,
Oh yeah.
just like, and that's probably the worst thing I ever did. Is David and Autumn were behind me coming to my new house, and I had weird fishes on, and I passed up my street because I was just so fucking
Oh,
enthralled by the
no.
music.
I'm not impaired at all. I just passed my
Right.
house.
Did they know, or were they
They
unaware of
were
your?
no, well, I did a U-turn, and then they realized, and once I got home, I was like, "Sorry, guys, I was listening to Radiohead," and they were like, "Yeah, I knew something was off."
Right. I was gonna say, they didn't know about your tripping there? No, no. Okay. Yeah. Well, if they listen to this, they're gonna know now. So the secret's out.
Right.
Yeah, I have yeah, I don't really see the only times that I've had what could be considered, I guess, a bad trip isn't really a bad. I just know that I won't do that again. I'm not gonna just go to someone's random birthday shindig at an apartment, closed encased apartment that they won't let me go outside. And I mean, they would have let me, but they were yelling and people. It just caused a whole scene. And other than that, I had literally done something stupid, and I felt horrible about it. And I left the house with Timmy and Nick to take mushrooms and walk around town, and that's
Oh,
what we
that's
did.
right.
And
Yeah.
it was pouring. It was a torrential downpour, and we were fucking walking around in this it's soaking wet. And I remember it started to take over, and Timmy was like on the corner of one street staring at a mud puddle, and a cop's like car is setting at like the four-way stop, and he's just like looking over at Tim, is staring blankly down at a puddle.
Staring at like a storm drain.
Yeah, storm drain. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I stood on the amphitheater stage just as the rain was coming down, and it's just hitting me. And the beginning was amazing because it was just like, oh my God, you could the echo of the water. It's like being like in a cave almost, sort of thing. It was pretty cool. Didn't really care. I didn't care at all that I was soaking wet. Didn't matter to me. I was fine with it. I remember we walked by and a lady was trying to get in her apartment, and she had a bunch of groceries, and she was clearly struggling. And there's three capable people to help her out, and I was like, we should go help her out. And I don't think that's a good idea. She's gonna wonder why three strange men are coming up to her soaking wet. Do you need help with your groceries? Like, it just didn't seem like a good idea. And there's like somebody like clearing off table, a waitress is like eavesdropping on the conversation, is like, what is wrong with this town? And then we just walked on our way. I went to Sly's apartment and he kicked me out. He kicked us all out. We all remember. I think
Yeah, I remember getting there and like the hallways were all like
oh yeah, they were all
windy
bent.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
shining.
I was like, whoa, this is
But I guess the person that was in the control, the person that was there to oversee all Timmy and I, had never taken mushrooms before, and that was Nick. And it was
yeah.
and Nick didn't take them then, and it was just Timmy and I. And so
Right.
Nick was just hanging out with two guys tripping. He doesn't,
I had
Oh,
and and at that time, I believe at that time I hadn't tripped yet. Right.
No,
So
you
you were
had-
the guide.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. So you wouldn't even know how.
I have
like,
no
what
idea
their
what they were
experience-
nothing. No clue.
no clue. And he was like,
Genius move, guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just like, he's like, what are we doing again? Why are we going now? We got to go this way, Nick. No, what? I'm
Yeah,
trying, why
yeah,
are we walking
right.
around in the rain? Why are we going anywhere? I was just like, gotta just let
Yeah.
it go, man. Just let it go. He's
I
like, I don't know what's
remember
going
that
on.
day.
I don't know what's
And I
going
don't
on.
know, but I don't know. I know I was like at Ray's house, I think. But I remember you guys coming home afterwards. I can't remember the whole day, but I just remember you telling me about it.
Oh, was it at Ray's mom's house? Or
I
or
think
were they
so, yeah.
Bean lives now? Yeah, I think so, because I'm pretty sure we took them, we ate the mushrooms there, and then we drove to the
Okay.
downtown because we wanted to, we knew it wouldn't kick in 10 minutes or whatever it was. So,
Yeah.
and then we came back probably. I'm assuming then we came back after it was all done. But I remember just being like completely like, because I had done something stupid and I felt horrible, and we took mushrooms. And as I'm waiting, because I thought Brad would be home so we'd be able to hang out there, and he wasn't. He was like gone, or he was sleeping or something like that. Um, and I just remember feeling like just overcome with the grief and just sadness, and thinking that this is a miserable time. It was like my second time taking mushrooms, and it was a miserable experience for that time. It was a miserable experience, but afterwards I was like, you know what? Now I know not to do that. So now, how bad was it? Definitely
Yeah.
taught me something. Um, yeah, definitely not gonna have a guide that hasn't done it before and knows what's going on.
Right.
Right. The next time
Definitely.
after that, I never had that. I mean, when we went to the Sigur Rós concert, Nick and
Well,
I.
that's why it was a bad time, right? Like that's
No, it was a bad time
because
mostly
I
because
was
no, because of
well,
what was.
yeah, well that's well, because of what happened, sure, but because I didn't know what you were going through, my responses and the things that I did didn't weren't thought about,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
They were just done, and yeah, so yeah, absolutely. If you're going to have a guide, anyone is going to have do this. They need people with them, but more importantly, they need people that understand what you're going through, what's going
Yes.
on,
And
because
how
it
susceptible they can be.
exactly so exactly. I mean, yeah, you just have to be, be able to be considerate if you're, yeah.
right. Yeah. So, but the after that, nothing but solid guides. I think what was it? Brad and Ray were our guides for Sigur Rós.
Yeah,
Perfectly
that
fine.
was an awesome time.
Yeah.
I remember Brad, like Brad was like, we can't stop here, we gotta keep moving, you know.
Yeah. Right.
And then Brad was like, wave to Ray, every guys, wave to Ray. And we were like, well, wave to Ray, like right out in Millennium Station, And
And then
yeah, it was a
he's like, "Don't
great
smoke a
time.
cigarette here, Nick. We're not actually
Yeah,
outside."
yeah, I felt like I was out. I thought I was outside. And the worst part was that, like, oh my God, when the train stopped when we were at the station, like I was right there to open the door, and I just froze. I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Can I open this door? Should I open this door?
Yeah.
Like I should not be the person
Right. You shouldn't
to
be handling this
open the
job.
door.
No.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, we were in
And
the.
then and I
Yeah.
remember Brad was like, just open the door, Nick. Which just prompted me to do that. But I remember like late night, like after the concert, going to Duncan. There's a lot of great stuff
Oh
that
yeah, Dunkin'
happened that
Donuts.
night. Yeah. But yeah, you go ahead, and I'll talk about the stuff that I remember.
Well,
Because
it's
I'm
just
sure you have a
that's
lot to
a.
say.
Well, I mean, it's just that was kind of a excerpt. I was just saying about good guides. We had good guides when we went to
Oh, okay.
Sigur
You
Rós, and
want to
yeah,
talk about okay.
we can come back to it. I was just that was kind of what I was getting at there. But
Gotcha.
now you got me thinking about it.
Well,
uh,
I'm just saying, like, because that's probably one of the best trips ever.
oh, you
I've tripped several times, but that was probably the best one
got to see Sigur
I've ever
Rós.
had. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
That's amazing.
It started taking over. We took them at the house, got in the car. By the time we got to the train station, I started to feel a little bit of something. By the time we were
Yeah.
like halfway there, I was like, okay, yep, I'm in. I'm starting to
Yeah.
trip now.
As I was grabbing my seat, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Like as I was finding my seat, I was like, "Oh, it's hitting me. This
Yep.
is weird. This train looks weird, really weird." And yeah, we sat down, and I'll never forget this like the posters that they had like on the train. My brother and I we were losing it. We were laughing so hard at this poster that said it showed this guy like on his phone. He had like sunglasses on. He's got a big smile on, and it said, "Don't be like Bob." Bob takes up two seats on the train, right? Bob talks loud on his cell phone. Don't be like Bob. And we look at that and we're just like, honestly, Bob looks like kind of cool. Like
Bob looks
kind of
like
cool. Like I'd hang out with him.
Bob looks like a
what's
fun time.
like he looks like a fun guy. Like what's
Yeah.
the big deal? Why,
Yeah.
And it was so good, so funny, man.
I-
And I'll never forget like handing the ticket lady coming by, and I handed her the money for the ticket. And at that point, it didn't make sense to me. I just knew that if I handed her this 20 or this 10 or whatever it was, that I would get the change back. Whatever she gave me back, that's what it was, right? It doesn't matter. She gave me like $1 back. That's what it would have been,
Yeah.
Because it just didn't make sense to me, the whole currency stuff.
Mm.
But I remember using a debit card later that day to buy 2 beers when we got to the
Opera House.
actual the actual theater itself. And I almost walked away with the 2 beers before paying. And they're like, hold on, you got to pay for those. I was like, well, what am I doing?
Of course.
Like, of course I do. And then I had to sign my name, and that was really weird, like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. Yeah, that's great.
Everything seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to the Opera House, and I remember it looked like The Shining. It reminded me of the hotel from The Shining because the floorboards were bent and twisted. I went.
Right.
I saw a velvet couch. I'm sorry. I saw a velvet couch. I was like, that's a velvet couch. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta touch that. And I go out, sir, that's the ladies' restroom. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to touch the couch.
Different time, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I go to my gender associated bathroom where I went upstairs, and there was like a urinal. There was like 3 urinals, but they were up some like steps to the right.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like the room got smaller the further in you got in. It was really weird. I don't remember much other than I know Nick got beers for everyone, or for me. I remember being thankful for that. It gave me something to hold on to so people wouldn't I wouldn't think people.
Well, I remember you. I remember you coming up to me and Ray, because Ray and I were sitting together, and you had the ticket in your hand, and you were saying something, and then you said, "Enjoy the show," and you tapped the ticket.
Oh yeah, I tapped
on the railing.
Yeah.
like you were the one. and then you sat down. You couldn't stop laughing. Like,
oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy next to me, I was thinking he's gonna think I'm insane because I just sat down and I'm just like shaking in laughter because I tapped the tickets and I walk away and I was like, that was weird. Why did you do that, man?
Enjoy the show.
Enjoy the show. What am I, the head honcho here? I don't know what the hell.
Right, yeah.
Find your seat.
Set all this up.
Yeah, and I'm just like,
so enjoy. Well, why'd you give us these seats, man? Why did you get seats closer to the stage? Oh man,
it's good stuff.
That was great. Yeah.
I remember the show. At one point, Jonesy, lead singer, or whatever. He like turned into like the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube band.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And it felt like they were playing the show for me. It was like personal. Yeah, it was
for sure.
That was definitely a good trip.
That was great. Yeah, I remember like just sitting there before, like, as everyone was still walking in, finding their seats, and like looking up and seeing like how just like the whole dome and everything. It was just amazing, right? But like everyone that kept walking in, right, that I see, I just felt like, oh, I know them, I know that person. Oh yeah, I know that person. That's just what it felt like, Like, I was like, yeah, I know that person. Of course I do.
So interesting.
Like it was so crazy. But I remember this other time, like I don't remember exactly where we were going, because I know we went to the Bean, right, at some point, or like.
Oh, a homeless guy asked me for a cigarette.
Right, yeah. But I remember we were just walking on the sidewalk, and I remember having this thought because of this interaction between these 2 homeless guys that literally just like happened. And what it was this homeless guy just walks up to the other guy, and he goes, "You get anything today?" And the guy that he asked, you could see his face just like annoyed, already annoyed. Like as if he deals with this guy every day, gets asked the same thing every day, right? And he's like, "No, I got nothing yet," and that just that little reaction or interaction and me tripping out, I just had this like story just instantly put together of this is what goes on every day, right? They know each other, this is pretty typical that this guy looks like he's just sick of this guy,
Like
right?
it's like a
Like
sitcom for
just
homeless people.
right, yeah.
Like homeless Harry.
Uh,
Oh, it's Bob
but it's
again
just like
taking up my
it was it was just that moment just by passing by and listening,
yeah.
not even interacting with them, that I felt like I understood a little bit of their everyday life, just like interactions.
And you
you know
cared about it.
you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing that's fascinating. Like Chris said earlier, about like the old lady or the lady trying to get the groceries. Like, would you even have the thought to help if you weren't in that state?
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Or you just for some reason you're more compassionate
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
even picked up a hitchhiker in my days of tripping a lot because I was like almost always on the euphoria part of it because I was
Right.
doing it so
Yeah.
much. I'm like, oh yeah, of course I'm gonna pick up this guy, and he ended up being a great guy and everything. And it's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
it kind of shows you it's a little sad that we can't actually be like that all the time because it's not
Right.
safe.
Right.
But it's
Sure.
like, why aren't we like that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why aren't
Yeah.
we more empathetic and everything? But
Yeah.
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Trying to think of I mean, there's a lot of great stories that have, or I think they're great, stuff like that. But in terms of bad trips, I don't know. Christian, you said you only trip, that would be your first trip, would probably be the one you didn't like or like the most, but also had like a negative connotation to it, or maybe not at
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
One of the things that I think contributed to that was that I had told Brooke that I was going to play D&D at 5 in the morning.
That's just something people do.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just like, yeah, we're playing at 5 in the morning, and I knew I was going there to take shrooms.
yeah, you started off in
Yeah.
a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's no
Yeah.
good.
And so that was like, why would I lie to her about this? Like, and I don't regret that, honestly. She wouldn't have been supportive of it in the first place.
Right.
Right.
But
Right.
honestly, so like how Ray was saying that, everything opens a door. Um, I think that opened the door. So like cannabis became completely different to me after that.
Yeah.
And even like, I haven't smoked in like almost 2 years now because I've had like 4 or 5 kind of like existential freak out moments where everything kind of went um you know I see the polarity and like there's like good and evil, and it all goes back to like my upbringing where it's like Jesus and the devil,
Mm.
and it's still, again, like, even though it scares the fuck out of me, it's still like I'm learning from it. It happened at a concert, and I ended up like leaving the concert, and
I think I remember
the
telling you about that.
last time was literally, I mean, Ray, do you remember that day almost 2 years ago now? It was during summertime. I came over and I just like got in your pool. I
Yep.
was just like, you mind if I go in the pool?
Yep.
And that day, like, I took two, and at that moment I was smoking a lot of Delta 8, which never really made me freak out. But I took 2 Delta 10 gummies and came over to your place and went in the pool. And I was actually completely fine that day, even though it felt kind of mushroom trippy, which edibles for some reason just do that to me.
They're supposed to be pretty strong. I've never had them, but
Well, I was good that day, and then the next day I took them, and it was 2 again, and I ended up, with my mom and grandmother in my kitchen, and me laying on the floor crying, and then washing my grandmother's feet and sobbing. Um, so yeah, a lot of shit with that
damn.
stuff.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me actually now because of these bad trips that teach you a lot, but fuck, man, it's scary as hell, and you never know if you're really gonna come out of that shit.
Yeah, there's that fear, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I like, the kind of the conclusion I finally came to, and then lo and behold, they have discovered now, because they're actually able to do tests now, but there is an odd similarity between the scans of a child's brain and the scan of a child or a person on mushrooms and LSD and everything. Uh, I was talking about earlier how there's just things when you're in these states. You're like, oh man, I know it. That's it. That's the universe. That's what it's
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. I got it. That's it. Well, when it's like something good or something like very philosophical or deep, you're like willing to hold on to that after the trip. Like, yep, that's it, man. I found some real truth on this trip.
Hmm.
But then you have a negative trip, and in the moment you're like, holy shit, what the fuck's going on? But then afterwards you dismiss that as like, oh, that was just, a bad trip. But then I kind of thought later on, like, well, you can't, if you don't ever know then,
Hmm.
because if you dismiss any part of a trip, then you dismiss all of it, or you have to accept all of it, right?
Yeah.
So you really are like a child, and a child will believe anything, right?
Yeah.
They believe there's a
Yeah.
fucking monster under their bed. And and a trip, you could believe that. I know you guys have been in these situations where, yeah, if you were in the right situation, you would fucking believe there's a monster under your bed.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Because you get into a childlike state. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's so great about it, but also can be so scary, because children get more scared than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
About anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can convince yourself of so much great things, but you can convince yourself of so much horrible stuff, like my
Sure.
brother Tony, who fucking vampires were after
Right.
him for months, after a trip, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that and and I think that these people that are, doing these therapies and everything, they get the plasticity of what's happening. It makes your brain more plastic, which is why musicians and everybody can just come up with phenomenal shit, because your brain's more open. It's more able to change, and that's how you can cure yourself of shit, because you're able to change your patterns, you know what I mean? But if you fucking go in the wrong state of mind, you can really
Well, I will say too that, I mean, you guys, I don't know about Nick, but you guys know my dad. And with his mom, she was very like super schizophrenic, where she was like, when he was a kid growing up, she had foil up on the windows and shit, and said she was abducted by aliens, which maybe she was, but but she was very schizophrenic. My dad is schizophrenic as well. And and I'm not saying that I am, but it might be one of the one of the things that keeps triggering this.
right.
That I think I'm always kind of in that state of questioning and seeing through all the bullshit of what reality actually is. That when that does that to me, it's almost like an overdrive pedal being stomped on.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
And then like I get in those fucking like loops real quick, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, loops are the worst.
I
But any kind of like baggage from your family will fucking, I mean, my first bad trip. So when my grandpa had dementia, he would go to the bathroom and he would shit like all over the place. And he would come out, and my dad would go over there and be like, "Dad, what are you doing? What's happening?" And my grandpa literally couldn't see the shit on his hands and all over the bathroom and everything. That he just, and my dad's cleaning it up and everything. And well,
Hmm.
I'm going to the bathroom on a mushroom trip and I'm wiping my ass, you know
Oh,
what I
man.
mean? And
Yeah.
and then I get myself clean, I'm the toilet paper is clean, but I'm like, wait, what if there's shit everywhere right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I start, like, I just have that thought. What if I'm having a like dementia.
Yeah.
And how would I ever know that I'm not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
And just shit like that. And that's the wrong shit to be thinking about when you're tripping.
Yeah.
But then that's also creates a negative, because as soon as you think that's the wrong thing to think about, then you put yourself in even a more negative thing.
Yeah.
You know, you should
Yeah.
just float it out and be like, yeah, fucking think
Right.
about it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's something you're going to think about now.
That's
Let
so
it
true.
go.
I had an interesting experience. I was just coming down from LSD, right? And I was going to bed. And so I still got the LSD brain, right? So it's hard to go to bed, right? It's
Oh,
just
yeah,
running and running
absolutely.
and running. And one of the things that it came to eventually was oh, I am my mind. I am literally my mind. I am stuck in this, right? And I
Right.
can't get out.
Right.
I just want to get out. I just really just want to get out, and I was just laying there in my bed, just like, oh God. And then just thinking about this over and over and over again. And I just kept like fighting it, and I couldn't sleep, and it was really freaking me out. And then I just kind of let it go, right? I was
Yep.
like, okay,
That's it.
I'm just gonna let me think about it. And then eventually my mind started thinking about stuff that wasn't as bad, and I just fell
Right.
asleep, right?
Yeah.
But man, was it stuck in that place for too long,
Mhm.
and it was scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it can knock you on your ass with fear, and it's usually something to do with death or
Yeah.
losing someone else, or like not having any control of anything. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
usually.
That's
Yeah.
something I've been learning too, and I think it's a part of those trips is like when I'm even sober now, I can see when I'm getting in that loop myself, and I start to get like my heartbeat starts to get really bad and feel like I'm almost gonna have a panic attack. And I'm like, how am I even existing right now? And this is completely sober. And then
Yeah.
I get afraid that something's coming to actually like get me. It's coming to like, but then there's something like kicked in my head. I know this sounds cheesy as fuck, but I'm like, if somebody walked in my door right now to murder me, I'm gonna fight. Like I might die, but I'm gonna fight. So
Yeah.
so why am I so afraid? Because I always think when your adrenaline starts rushing and you get in a situation where you actually have to fight, you really don't give a shit about dying.
Right.
You're like in this survival mode, and it sounds like those are the same things, but they're not. You're like, I'm not gonna die. That's why I'm trying to survive. So
Yeah,
that's
but
kind
you
of
at that moment that you're not thinking about dying, otherwise you'll die.
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Exactly. That's what the whole point of
It's almost like you
survival
have
is.
to be irrational in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I had my bad trip at that apartment, I sent Timmy a text. I was like, they won't let me go outside, which I mean, what are they gonna do? They keep me in the I actually hid in the bathroom for about 15 minutes. It's probably like 3, but just to, and they kept calling my name, Chris. When are you gonna come out, Chris? And I'm like, oh my god.
Oh
Jesus.
Jesus! I would have.
Fuck.
And
Jesus
just,
Christ.
like I don't know why. Like we got the entertainment. Why isn't he doing anything? God Lord, I didn't know I was gonna
Right.
be. Then I sent Timmy a text and I was like, this is blah blah blah. This is not going well. And he's like, you're just in a loop.
Yep.
Everything's okay. You're gonna be fine.
Yep.
There's nothing to worry about. And I was like, that's true. And I was like, this is crazy. I've never been in a loop before. I said, and I was like, I've never really been in that sort of thing. Because even when it's pouring and rain and stuff like that, I had like this moment of just regret because of the stupid thing I did, which was I allegedly, I'm just gonna say allegedly, so I don't get sued, may or may not have downloaded illegally a movie, and that movie may have been Fast 5 because I wanted to laugh.
My God.
Because I wanted to laugh. Or it was The Last Airbender. It could have been that one, or it might have been Zoolander. It was one of those.
I remember specifically that it may or may not have been Fast 5.
Did you get in a loop where you're just like, it is all about family?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And what I'm not a fan of the series at all.
That movie sucked.
Yeah,
believe it or not. Wow.
I didn't need to download it to know that, but I decided
Right,
give that a shot. Yeah,
Makes it even worse.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
God.
For Fast Five,
What? The
Right?
I don't know if it makes it worse or hilarious. Just
That's
the
true.
funniest thing ever, man.
Uh,
Like,
of all the movies, Fast Five.
oh man, do you imagine paying $250,000 in fines for
Right.
Fast Five?
Oh no.
Um,
Jesus.
I think one of the things that this is just like a personal irk of mine, um, because psychedelics and taking them, there's this, it's a euphoric experience. It's a spiritual experience for many, many people in some, however way you want to, characterize spiritual, however that you see fit. But it is something, it seems more than what, you normally get. But there are people, I mean, like, there was one time it was just on a whim. It was like, hey, Chris, you want to take a hit of acid? And I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna be up then all night. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, we're having a good time, playing music. I think I got on the drums for a little bit. I'm having a good time. For me, taking any sort of psychedelic, I don't ever get outside. Usually, very rare. I'm usually pretty much even keel. It's almost like, did he take anything or did he not take anything? I can't really tell. That's kind
Yeah,
of at least
you
how
are like that. Yep.
just kind of like he doesn't really exert anything in this regard, like anything out of the ordinary. But there's a couple people. I think it was one of the guys that, and it might just be maybe a little bit to do with like drug dealers themselves. I've had some issues, but like we've all taken the acid he's brought. We're all sitting around, and for whatever reason, he felt the need to, hey guys, look at the moon. The moon is so big. The moon, isn't it this? And don't you understand this and this? And I was like, dude, calm down. Just look at it. Just enjoy it. Stop trying to force things. Just let it be. Let it breathe. And the forcing of, this sort of attitude about it, I understand, but I feel like it's missing the point. There's that old Eastern Chinese saying, I think it's Chinese, I don't know, where it's like trying to make rough water smooth with a flat iron. You're trying to force something on it that's not good. Just let it go. And my understanding that as long as I've been taking psychedelics is when you try and force something, like it just makes it loses all of its majesty. And I remember being like pulled out of like a trip and looking over at I think it was Mark. And I was like, what is he doing? Like it's why is he, I was like, oh, he's cool, man. I was like, I'm not saying anything. It's just like you're killing the vibe here for me, pal. And maybe it's probably just me, but like I said, this is a personal little thing for me. When people try to make it seem like they've got like some, like, no, you're not understanding me. Like I'm willing to sit there and be like to listen to thoughts and ideas, but it's just when you try and make it like a dogma of some sort, where
Right.
it's just where it's where you
Right.
lose me. It's where you lose me.
Yeah.
I say, but like that's pretty much it. Just let it, take it, and let what happens happens. Buy the ticket, take the ride. That's my advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could probably talk for another 2 hours, but I think we've been talking for at least an hour and a half, if not a little bit more. If you guys don't have anything else to add, we can
Oh,
just
I
cut
think
it on.
there's just like the same with the music one. Like there's always more that can
Alright.
be added, but
Right.
Right.
uh
Well, I'm definitely happy
Yeah.
that when it comes to therapy, they're using these drugs to help in this regard, because I think it's been. I mean, obviously, it's well overdue. It's over 50 years, you were saying.
Sure.
So it's just like there's
Yeah.
some hope in that
Well,
regard.
I'd like to add just to say like that the knowledge that can be obtained through psychedelics is something that everybody already has, right? Something that you can already obtain without them. However, the psychedelics just kind of help us, right? Like it's basically like the flowers get watered through nature already, but you can help them by just pouring water on them.
Ooh,
Help
I
them
like
grow a
that.
little fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
All right, man.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's all
Yeah, I
there.
agree.
It's
Agree.
a good way
Mm.
to access those. And like I said, I don't know if it's for everybody as much as I'd like it to be. It's pretty much
Right.
been my answer. You sound like you could use a good dosage of psilocybin. I think
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
like
Right.
it used to be like that person could use a beer. No, that person could use a really good trip in a nice place, surrounded by nice,
Mhm.
Yeah.
comfortable. I think that would do wonders for their personality, for their life, their overall health and well-being. I think they'd give a whole
Yeah,
new
they could do wonders for him not being an asshole.
Yeah, I could do that too.
I think that sometimes like that
Yeah.
person
Right.
needs to
Right,
fucking
exactly.
take it.
People like obsessed with their careers and materialistic
Yeah.
things and all this sort of stuff. It's just, the society in which we live. I think the capitalist society in which we live, I think, psychedelics, mushrooms, serums, stuff like that are even more important because it helps break away from these sort of things. You look at life in like a child would. Like a child doesn't understand why,
Right. Right.
all this is important. I need to get my,
Right.
TVs and all this. Just it's a kid, whatever. They may like the tablets.
Right.
They, they'll play with a car,
Right.
a toy car,
Right.
just as much, so it is what
It's
it
almost
is.
like witnessing a new
A box.
perspective,
Yep.
almost like you're just kind of not in control of that new perspective. You're getting to look at it, and then whether or not you want to integrate that in real life is up to you.
Mhm.
But it's not easy, nobody cares.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, right, exactly.
Nobody sees it because they just don't want to. That's really it.
So I'll probably leave with this one final little tidbit here. There's a long time ago, a friend of mine, his daughter wanted me to come watch a movie with her. She was like Wreck-It Ralph or something like that, and we watched this movie. And she's like, "Do you want to play Barbie dolls?" I think she's, little girl, and I was like, "Oh, sure." And so I'm like playing this. I think it's kind of funny, the idea, but like I'm just like, this grown man playing with Barbie dolls.
Right? Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
was playing, and she was playing how kids played, and I had forgotten what that was like, what that entails, what mindset you have to be in. And for the life of me, I couldn't get it. I was like, what do they want me to do? Isn't it like, huh? And then I realized you have to let go of that. Like, it's not like an ego sort of say, maybe a little bit,
Yeah.
but like you're an adult, you're this, you're that. You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
It's letting go of all that and enjoying the
Right.
absurdity of pretending as if you were this Ken doll and this is your
Right.
mansion,
Yeah.
and you're just enjoying that little world that you've created.
You know who really understood that, I'd say, is Fred Rogers.
Oh,
Like
God,
Fred
yeah.
Rogers, like
Yeah.
really understood that,
Yeah.
and he rolled with that, and man, he changed a lot of people's lives.
Oh, yeah.
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 You have to, and it was kind of sad. It was kind of bittersweet in a way that I had forgotten what it was like to be a child and to play, just to simply play, where like
Yeah.
the couch isn't a couch, it's a mountain range,
Right.
Right.
It's
right.
all that stuff. They can use
Oh.
in their magic for anything. And when you're on acid or mushroom, sometimes the couch looks like a mountain range.
Yeah.
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 Right. Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's what the ego is. It's not even just your thought of who you are, but it's like you identify everything as something.
Yeah, it's
and
language.
so strongly, that everything that is a symbol, that you can read it as a symbol.
Right.
And kids are just literally like, no, I want it to be that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. This has been fun. Like we could all of our conversations, at least these ones so far, have been like, well, this could be like a 10-parter. This is ours.
Right.
Right.
I mean, there's other people. I mean, we could bring a number of people on that have also had their own experiences with psychedelics and have all their stories as well. Yeah, but this has been a lot of fun. All right. Well, and with that, I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation, and will join us again for another installment of History with Ursafet. Don't forget to hydrate, exercise, and to like and subscribe to the podcast. All these things are essential for your health and well-being. Take care of yourselves and each other.